Let's go into section 5, our last section on theory for the day session. And this is where you really start to finesse things a little bit, where you start to combine a lot of these elements together we've been talking about throughout the day. Here's a great little sequence from The Untouchables. Again, Brian De Palma. And we're going to look at how many of these elements can be combined to create a really interesting scene. Obviously, motion is inherently existent in every move that you do, but the way you sequence pieces together is ultimately important. It's in fact critical. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you combine shots together and allow these principles together to make an effective scene. So here we are in Chicago, which is actually not at all Chicago where they shot it, but anyways, on South Racine Avenue. We're craning down onto Sean Connery's house, and suddenly we crane all the way down to this nefarious character down here. You'll see him later in the show. Pulls out a book of matches. Notice that hard cut doesn't feel that hard because we're continuing the motion of the first move, including into this motion here. So it feels like a natural progression. He's going to walk out. That will motivate us to tilt the camera up. You catch Sean Connery looking out the window, feels something. Cue the actor as he looks away from the window. And here we go. He's going to climb up the side of the building. Cut to a point of view shot. So remember we talked about camera styles and point of view. Here we are again. And let's try to make the audience feel like they're part of this. You're going to see that we're going to energize the camera a little bit here. For the geeks in the room, you can see the crane reflected in the windows. A little bit of the irony here that a cop who's against prohibition or fighting alcohol has a little drink of his own. You see that little pull away there, that little hesitation, and look away, giving the camera a bit of character. The entire purpose of the scene is to continuously ratchet up the suspense, because these two guys have obviously been sent to kill Sean Connery for messing with Al Capone. In walks the actor with his arm to push the windows open. And the camera does not cut, it continues. Continues to build the tension as Connery walks right by and doesn't notice. You may ask yourself how they do that. Well, it's a Steadicam operator at the end of a Chapman or crane just walks off. Notice how the camera moves, a little bit of a personality, as if though you were in someone's footsteps. Naturally progresses to the alleyway behind the house. In comes the arm. To the camera shadow, but it could be the shadow of the hat they're wearing, fedora. No one's out there. You should already be noticing in the direction that he's sensed him before. He sensed him when he was in the kitchen, being Connery. And now he's done a full 180 around his room. So that when this happens, you're probably not that surprised. Whoops. And notice how we progress in our coverage. From a medium to another medium reverse, a tight of his head, and then a tight of the gun.
Get out of here, you giggle bastard.
You'll catch a glimpse of something right there. Cut away. Sean Connery hated doing this scene because he hates guns, and I'm afraid this performance right here is not his best, particularly there. But he made it out. Very engaging scene with the use of camera motion, point of view, and the progression of sequencing in terms of coverage. So we're going to talk about creating dynamic sequences. We're going to look at storyboarding, blocking, motivating movement. Talk a little bit about sound and light, Hitchcock's rule, covering a scene, moving masters, motivated movement, and when not to move the camera. And we'll end on a script breakdown and diagrams. Let's look at storyboarding first, then we'll look at blocking as well as foreground, background. I want you to watch this scene from Shawshank Redemption and the storyboards. And what I find interesting about this is you've got one of the world's best DPs, Roger Deakins, But even with such a wonderful visual artist, we're still really following the storyboards quite literally. Red exits door. Up into yard. Obviously, the director had most likely scouted this location first, given how similar these were. But the point is, the plan was very much adhered to.
Same old shit, different day.
Steadicam red from top of stairs
I'm up for rejection next week.
to his buddies. Additional angle for voiceover coverage, long lens shot of red and group walking toward camera. Shoot at various speeds. You can see the slow motion there. Turns his head there. We pan the arriving bus. Angle turns into helicopter shot as bus proceeds up the driveway. Shot keeps going. Camera rises up over the prison, swooping over the turrets. So if you're in doubt as to whether or not storyboards are useful, you'd almost think these were drawn after the fact. They were not. Revealing the yard and cons below, even the rotation on the camera is adhered to here. And you can see how a director can have a direct effect on the overall result of his vision into ending up on celluloid, or in today on digital hard drives in terms of binary code to render a scene. Dolly or Steadicam down aisle of bus for shot of Andy. The only thing that changed is Andy was in the last row as opposed to the second to last row. So again, I really say plan on being spontaneous. Do your prep. You can try to alternate things around that, but you don't need to. So now I want you to watch another scene, this time from The Sting, and I want you to pay particular attention to blocking. Blocking refers to setting marks for actors and setting movement. This is 1973, 2 years prior to the Steadicam. This film in general doesn't have that much movement in it. It's a good thing to study because it'll show you what you can do when you don't have the fancy equipment to move the camera. I want you to watch these frames and notice that there's always movement within the frame, either by the primary actors or the extras. Here we go. He's pacing back and forth. Got the cigar lady. Other characters come through the back door. See the guy in the bottom left moving around in his chair. Coat lady comes out. Secondary character, that extra walks off out of frame. There are no dead moments. So one of the biggest things you can do when you block out a scene is pay attention to how the actors are moving before you ever bother with the camera. If that's not energized, as was in Schindler's List here when he was pacing back and forth, your scene will feel stale. Block out your actors. Get those extras, if you have them, to walk in and out of frame, to make your frame richer. You see how there's constantly people wiping in the foreground and background. Let's go ahead and look at the scene from above. You can see what's being done. Here's a diagram from overhead. Again, we've got our main camera below. You've got our actor pacing, turning around. The door opens. You got two characters walking up. Coat lady comes out. This guy on the bottom left is about to get up. Oof. Action continues. We're now going to cut in right over there. Newman walked into frame. Again, making it more dynamic. Camera's not moving. Looks out. Point of view shot. See the bartender moving in the foreground. Here we go from right to left. The guy with his ticket behind him. The guy gets up. He shuffles his feet. At no point do we really have dead spots. All the way down to this movement in the background here. Cut back to him. He walks away. Cut right into this move over here. He's walking in and out of the shot. He's helping the cut. Notice how Newman and the bartender go from left to right, and then we pan from left to right, right over here. It's just about keeping the scene alive at all times. That's the key. People do not have attention spans anymore in this modern world. So if you want to keep them focused on your film or your video, you have to give them a rich frame. That's the key. If you don't give them a rich frame, they will not continue to watch. No one wants to watch a bunch of locked off shots in haikus. When the 5D Mark II came out, there were so many absolutely horrid videos that came out of cameras shooting a pond for 15 minutes. And then another thing for 15 minutes or 15 seconds. It felt like 15 minutes. Notice that what differentiates Hollywood from indie films is the richness of their frames, not the amount of money they put on screen in terms of visual effects and all. Of course, it does help. But this is part number 1 in terms of setup, number 2, number 3, number 4. So 4 setups to shoot that scene. That green and white camera and 4 and 1, I'm not sure which one is which. Maybe they did it, the only time they ever moved the camera here is on the dolly track down here. You can see by the marks down there. All right? The next thing we're going to look at, again, is foreground and background. How do you appreciate left to right motion? What type of geometry are you looking for in your frame? Horizontal? Close, but no cigar. The other one? Vertical. Look at these blue lines when you start this shot. You'll notice the amount of vertical lines in there. That's how you notice left to right movement. That's how you notice panning and sliding. See that? And now this character is going to motivate the start of the move. This guy is kind of countering a little bit. He's staying anchored. Now in comes this guy. Look at that nice blue vertical line so you can appreciate the move. This guy moves from right to left. Those guys counter it. And now comes our main purpose of the action here. They're going from right to left. These guys are sawing back and forth. The idea is if a character walks from right to left, they're going to motivate you to pan from right to left. Whereas if the actor walks in the opposite direction, they're even more blurry. It creates more eye candy. So you want a combination of those things in all of your scenes when you're trying to do these nice setups to make them very rich. You don't want everyone going in the same direction. You do want some actors motivating the camera to move so it's not randomly panning, but you also want some counter motion. Let's look at this scene from Spielberg in E.T. We have a scene going on up in the house where E.T. is back to life. We've got some kids at the bottom of the hill that are held away by security. And Spielberg, his script doesn't say much. The characters are at the bottom of the hill and they say 3 lines. Let's watch it. But notice how he makes this entire transition very rich to go from the house to the kids. Notice that they're motivating the camera from the top of the hill to boom down and pan right. These 2 cops are going to peel off now. The camera stops panning. And here's the dialogue. All this is for this. The entire dialogue is, ooh, they're going to die. Shut up, Craig. Something's definitely going to happen. That's deep. There's nothing there. But Spielberg is adding these transitions that makes his film a blockbuster, that makes it more rich, that involves you. Let's watch this in slow motion. You can see the amount of things that he and the ADs are doing. First of all, they have this column of guys coming down that motivates the camera to boom down and pan right to left. Notice all the blue vertical lines. They're carrying these weird cones. The red is counter motion. The white, motivating motion. This guy is that nice vertical blue line to make us appreciate that move. The guy in green, his entire purpose in life is to do this little arc, just to energize the frame. That's what he got hired to do. These 2 guys are now going to peel off from this column, as does the camera. They're going to step into their car. We slow down, we start pushing in on our actors. See this little piece of business going on here with the actors, the extras, and on the top left, and then they go ahead and deliver their lines. Do you understand how much is going on in what would be a 1-sentence line on a script? We cut from house to the characters below. That's it. But look at the amount of work that the directors and first ADs are putting into this to make this an energized frame. Coverage principles. This is perhaps the single most important thing I can give you in terms of a formula that you should never divert from. The 3+3 I made up. It's just simple. We're going to talk about a moving master as well. Let's go into what 3+3 means. You've probably read in the book that for any given scene, you should shoot a wide shot, which will help you establish the geography. If I don't show you the room as a director, you as the audience have no idea where we all are in relationship to one another, right? I need to set the scene, set the stage for the viewers. If I choose not to do this, you're going to feel confused. I can use that in a horror film, but most of you don't shoot horror films. I don't know, but I assume. So you want to set the scene. Golden rule. 2, you go to your medium. Idea being, find the hero, give me somewhere to look now. Lead me somewhere with your direction. And then 3, you're going to move in tight. Connect with the actor's eyes. This is the best direction you can give actors, is they have to connect with each other's eyes, and you need to connect with them as well as an audience. If I can't see your eyes, I'm not going to care about you. This is the simplest formula in the world. Wide, medium, tight, reverse. You can shoot any narrative scene, even non-narrative scenes, as long as you follow this formula. Why do I bother to point it out? Well, I read this 7 years ago in a book. I said, this is boring. I'm going to do it my way. I don't like following formulas. It bit me in the butt time and time again. You'd get back, you start the edit, editor looks at you and says, where's your reverse of this? Oh, I don't have it. You have a medium here and you have a tight on the reverse. I have a hard time cutting. Oh, I just thought we didn't need that. Just get this. Learn this formula, do it, and then break it. Do yourselves a favor. Any scene you cover, wide, medium, tight, reverse it. Worst case, you run out of time, do a wide and a medium, or a medium and a tight, so 2 plus 2. But you'll always be able to cover any narrative scene. You think I'm lying? Hey, Scorsese does it. Let's watch this from Goodfellas. You'll notice a Zolly in the beginning of the shot. See how the background is changing? He's zooming in. He's actually pulling out and zooming in. So we start off on a wide-ish. Changes a little bit because of the compression. We're going to cut to a medium. Medium close-up, really. What do we owe now? Term you should know on set. I got this, I owe that. What do you owe? The reverse. Same lens, other side. Don't challenge the formula. There it is. What do we owe now? Tight. Simple. The numbers beneath the frame are the duration of each shot on screen. So 28 seconds, 2 seconds, 2 seconds, 2 seconds, 13, 4, 5. The mistake a lot of directors make is on a shot like this, someone will flub a line, go out of focus on a 2-minute take, and they'll freak out. If you consider that most of these things are up on screen for 2 seconds, maybe 4, you're good. What do we owe now? Come on, it's the reverse tight. And you'll see this natural progression when that pops up there. Do you see how formulaic this is? Try and look at this scene from Blade Runner. And now imagine you're shooting this, as Ridley Scott did. And you see how even here it's out of order for the most part, but it works. Same exact coverage principles. Give the material to the editor, let them construct it in a different way, but you must give them the pieces. Otherwise, you'll be in trouble. So we're outside of the building, now we're back in the building. Over a general view, we boom down. Within the move, notice he does not look at the character when he knocks. Comes down to sit down. Let's go back to our other view so you can see just how formulaic the rest of the scene is. Notice that the coverage principles apply. They are just edited in a different order. Lots of pickup shots, a lot of detail shots. You can always get those with the second unit generally. Don't do those first, leave those for the end. Don't waste your time. Get your actors done. Notice how we went to a tight right away. We go back to a wide in pickups. So it doesn't matter how you're going to edit it. You just do that you should cover it. People often ask me, well, if I know I'm never going to use this piece of dialogue in the middle, can I not shoot it? And my answer is, if it's like 15 minutes or 10 minutes, Sure. But if it's like a minute or two extra, you're wasting all your time on setting up, on pre-lighting, on getting everyone blocked, on the focus marks. That extra 30 seconds to a minute doesn't cost you anything. Allows the actor to get their momentum, to follow their movements. Otherwise, you get lots of continuity errors where they're moving in different ways. But look at the formula. You see how visually, boom, boom, boom. And here as well. We're building a tension here as well. The more tension we have, the tighter we go. And vice versa. You cut back to a medium from the tight. Why? Because Ridley Scott wants to release a little bit of the tension momentarily. Make sense? Go tighter, tighter, tighter. Release for a second. Next thing you know, he's going to get shot anyways. So that's that scene. What I want you to notice is, don't fight the formula. It is there. And if worse comes to worse, no matter how rushed you are, as long as you know you get two pieces and two reverses, you can cut anything. Don't ever leave the set or an interview or whatever it is you're shooting without those two pieces, plus their reverses, because you really won't have much to cut. That's when your coverage gets stale, and you're forced to stay on one shot for too long because you don't have coverage to get out of it. Your pieces feel stale, and they're uninteresting, and audiences switch the channel, whether it's a commercial, a promo, a wedding video, a time lapse. Without coverage, people get disinterested very quickly. Here is an example. Yeah, of course. Yes. Yeah, at a minimum. If you do 2 takes of each, you're 12. That's what takes so long in cinema, is that you're getting this stuff so that you can cut something that's interesting. Okay? And what you'll learn is you'll learn to cheat when you shoot documentaries or whatever, and you'll just shoot just a little bit at the beginning, a little bit at the end, but you get different pieces of coverage in that natural progression. You shouldn't be shooting your wides towards the ends of your scene because you don't really cut back to the wides that as often if you're trying to create a build of tension. All right, you just have these things in your mind. You've done it 100 times. It becomes second nature. Okay, let's go back and look at a 3-person scene real quick from Fargo.
I'm talking about your potential.
This little kid is his back to his mother, little brat. She's talking to him, 2 shot. Reverse, okay. Back to a tighter version of her. She walks away, which sets them up for a 2-shot where William H. Macy walks in. Notice the camera's not moving. It's just panning and tilting, but built into the blocking is coverage. Does that make sense? It's a very economical way of shooting. Cut back to a medium shot or close-up of them. Same reverse on him, tighter shot of him. Okay? You'll start to notice how formulaic these things can be. Here is to your example, kind of Breaking Bad scene. We start off on tights, reverse, here's your wide from one side, same tight, going back and forth. Same wide from one angle, medium from the other angle, the reverse. Back to a wide again. Back to the tight. So you can see how this formula just applies to every single thing we shoot. It's always there. Just want to make sure you guys have it, because you can walk onto any Hollywood set tomorrow, apply this formula, and shoot. You don't have to reinvent original angles and incredible one-shot wonders, as long as you know this formula. So what happens when you have 7 people delivering dialogue? Well, Darabont showed up to this scene. He was freaking out. You can hear him talking about it on the behind the scenes or the voiceover, the director's commentary on the Blu-ray. He's like, how am I going to cover this scene? I don't have enough time, and I've got 7 pieces of dialogue. So I need to get all these wides, these mediums, these tights of every one of the characters. It's going to be incredibly cutty, incredibly jumpy. And what he found out is Roger Deakins leans in and says, why don't we do it as a one-shot? But the important part I want you to notice, besides the fact that they made their life simple, is how all these principles of wide, medium, and tight are covered within the move. Check this scene out. Start on a 8 shot, 8 people in the frame. We slowly start to slide in, a little slide right, a little bit of a push. Cover all the pieces of dialogue continuously in one take. But we're going from a wide, slowly towards a medium, and towards the end you'll see we're on a tight. What are we going to owe pretty soon? A reverse. As long as you get that, you can cut this no problem. Pushing in, connecting with his eyes, connecting with him, all within the same move. Here comes the reverse. Right here. Boom. Notice how we're slowly creeping in on both characters. Still creeping in. Keep in mind, too, that you don't always have to be on the person delivering the dialogue. Sometimes seeing the other actor's reaction is more powerful. Notice the creep finishes right about here. Okay, so this is a simple way to cover a multiple person dialogue scene. There's no rule anymore. Back in the day, you'd shoot everything one camera initially, and then the blockbusters came in. They started doing everything multicam for action. And initially, like 10 years ago, you'd read DPs crying foul because I can't light multicam, because you will sacrifice, right? You're not going to light each actor perfectly if you're shooting both of them at the same time. Whereas in today's economy, in episodic, you're shooting 2-3 cameras almost all the time, just to keep going, to satisfy all this coverage in a crunched period of time. And what's the first thing to go? Lighting and visuals for the sake of expediency. Because guess what? Who's going to win? The artist DP or the producer pushing to be more efficient and make your day and squeeze more things into one day? All right, let's talk about a moving master. A moving master is the idea of having this master that is in continuous motion that satisfies 2 things. Well, it's actually more than 2 things, but the main ones are that it's moving, but while it moves, it also picks up coverage, all right? When what that means is you can always cut back to it at any point from your other coverage. Now, the general rules you have to follow is that it should get closer to people as they deliver dialogue, and then back off and become more lively. When there's no dialogue, there should be more movement, whereas when there is dialogue, you should slow down and come closer to your characters. Make sense? Kind of follows the same principles we have. Watch this scene from Empire of the Sun. See how we pushed in for him, into him for a cowboy on his dialogue delivery. Now we're back to a wide within the same move. Over the shoulder, down below, same angle, or same side, that is, sorry. So tilt up for our other character. Now our doctor's going to go from one side of the bed to the other after this shot. How do we establish that as a director? We cut back to our wide master. Here you go. Still rolling from the first take. And now we're going to have him move in over Christian Bale's shoulder into frame right there. We owe the close-up to build the tension, to see her eyes. A little cutaway here as well as there. Back to our wide master that pushes in towards the end to build intensity. Okay, let's look at this from above again. I'm going to go ahead and do a big pan at the beginning of the shot over here as we follow Christian Bale, establish the environment, And now we're going to push into him, to a cowboy, as he delivers his dialogue. He pulls away from the camera. So we get to a 4-shot. She's kind of dead, so I don't know if it's a 3-shot or a 4-shot. Go to that side of the bed. 2-shot over her shoulder. Second angle from that side. Little pan, tilt up, pan right, back to the original angle, and then back this previous angle here. Back to our moving wide master that's momentarily paused. And back and back and back to the same cameras. Just finding a way to keep the cut alive, keep it energetic, keep it going. We're going to have 2 little pickup shots coming. Right over here. And over there, just to vary it a little bit. Back to our wide master. And again, we push in towards the end, right over here. So this is how Spielberg covers the scene. Okay? This is classic Spielberg, and a great way for you guys to consider in 4 setups. So you're 1, 2, 3, and then I'm putting together the 2 pickup shots. Cover your entire scene in a very dynamic way. Capiche? Yes? I still have most of you, yes? Okay, good. Let's look at it very quickly like this, just so you understand the visuals. Look at how varied this looks. Look at how many takes this looks like it is. And it's a little overwhelming. It's like, oh my God, I got to do all this? No. This is all one shot here. We're satisfying our needs of coverage from a wide to a cowboy back to a wide. 4-shot. Then we have this shot from below, nearing her point of view, kind of, but her perspective, his over the shoulder. We add this 3rd angle here because we can. Back to this shot, obviously, is the same as this shot. This shot is the same, a continuation of that shot. Back to our wide master to show him crossing the geography. So there's no confusion amongst the audience on how he went from one side of the bed to magically appear on the other side of the bed. And then we get back to the over the shoulder. A little bit of a tighter crop on this exact same angle here. Could have been done in the middle of the move or 2 different takes. And now the 2 cutaways, just to add a little variety to the overall take. And then we finish back on our initial wide master. So now, as you clump these together, you'll notice that all these shots here are 1 take. This is our 2nd setup, our 3rd setup, our 4th setup, 5th, and then 2 pickups. All right, so hopefully you can see how all this stuff is done. That's kind of the end of the theory for the day. You can relax a little bit. Okay, we're going to do 2 quick little examples of sound and light. Talk about how sound and light can motivate a scene. Talk a little bit about Hitchcock's rule real quick and lens selection. What is the motivating element within this scene? Sound. So that's what's driving the entire scene, driving the camera into great sequence within Shawshank, likely one of my favorite films ever. They're taking flight, they're feeling free because of the music, up to the speaker. We follow the input all the way to the microphone and the record player. Who is causing this? Darabont is slowly revealing who's responsible.
Those 2 Italian ladies were singing about.
Back to Andy. So the simple act of defiance, by playing music, he freezes the entire prison,
So beautiful it
and for a moment
expressed in words and makes your heart
enlightens them,
because of it.
frees their mind. It's a great example. These would be very awkward looking shots without that music.
Cage and made
as a connector.
It's all the way.
It's a very powerful sequence. Okay. And then it all goes downhill for poor Andy. Here's a great use of light. What differentiates a lot of, high-end DPs from very high-end is that they know to move the light, either flares in the lenses, moving the light within the scene. It's a great tool that you have at your disposal as a filmmaker. It's not just sound, it can be light. Case in point, here we are in Close Encounters. The parallax move going on there. So all that movement is borderline silly initially, but then when the light takes on another level. Have a nice trip. See you a little later. Last piece of the theory we cover is Hitchcock's rule. It's a very simple rule. It simply states that the largest person in frame, the biggest person in frame is the most important. One of the best ways to illustrate this is Citizen Kane in this scene right here. Again, we start off on this character with the contract. He's dominating the frame, right? Right up in there. He lowers the contract to reveal the second character, Kane's partner. They are determining how to break up assets of the empire. They are in control. Off screen, we're going to hear Citizen Kane. With a little pan and rocking back of the body, we reveal him. Notice how small he's getting in frame. Who's powerful here? The lawyer, the contract. Look at how oversized the windows are, how Orson Welles is messing with you in terms of depth perception. But as Citizen Kane turns around, he's taking power within the scene, he's taking control of his fate, and eventually he will tower over them. So Welles is playing with size and frame to help his narrative. And eventually he sits down with him. Lens selection, simple thing. The wider lens you use, the more dynamic your frame is going to be, especially in terms of depth. You'll notice that in a series of shots from Raising Arizona. Barry Sonnenfeld has a very particular style that's very dynamic. One of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of still photographers making when they move into film is they shoot too tight. When you have two people in frame, you don't want to shoot too tight because it compresses them too much. There's less depth of field. You have a hard time telling their relationship relative to one another, which is why I rarely shoot over a 50 mil with two characters. 85 starts to feel a little bit too tight unless you're going in for close-ups or singles. Sound good? The wider lens you choose, the more dynamic it will be. It's pretty well illustrated in this series here from Raising Arizona. So you'll notice there's a few long shots here, or the tight shots. Over there, you see how there's a tremendous lack of dynamism when we go tight? Yeah, that happened. Notice the jib down that's going to come up. You see how stale that shot feels? Oh, it is hilarious. It is funny. But look at how much more you appreciate the movement when you're on a wide angle and the depth. Look at this little jib down here. Whoosh. Sets this up really nicely. Nice. That's a great transition. So now we're going to go to ultra wide angle. Whoa! Really dynamic feel to it. Lots of fun. Very playful. Is he going to make it up the stairs or the ladder? He will, he will, he will. Of course he will. Oh, little cut. Of course he did. So definitely recommend you check that out. Quick piece about geometry, sequence, and most importantly, when not to move. Here is our rule of thirds. Now watch this scene and you'll find how uncanny it is that this overlay of the rule of thirds applies within the blocking of actors and lensing. I've also drawn a random triangle that I see when I look at this scene. And look how everyone kind of lines up within those two lines, within the placement, the gun, these characters, their eyes. See how you draw these lines between the characters and they seem to match throughout? All the way down to here and back, all the way down to how the characters line up beneath them, right over here. Pretty uncanny. So obviously Roger Deakins does not walk around with a rule of thirds with him. I would venture to say that after 30 years of framing, you see how the line just switched now as the balance on the frame is switched sides as he's fighting for himself and has just won him over. But after 30 or 40 years of lensing, I think that that's ingrained in a great DP's eye. He just sees or she sees and feels something. I watched this scene and I kept telling people, do you see the triangles everywhere? And they're like, what are you talking about? And I drew this thing and they're like, whoa, that's interesting. So triangles play in terms of the rule of thirds and the framing. They also play in terms of blocking. If you ever do diagrams of actors, you have 3 actors, block them out in triangles. It really helps you with your coverage. Don't make them flat. Make them triangular in the way they're placed around their scene. Do you see how magically lined up everything just seems to be, at least every other shot? So I just show this purely because I think it's cool, and it also shows you as you block out actors how triangles, if you look at lots of scenes, not all of them, with multiple actors, you will see these incredible triangle patterns between people all the time in effective blocking. Also, sequencing, it's a big part and parcel to what we do. Even when we don't move the camera, you'll notice in this fantastic little scene from Schindler's List how Liam Neeson's character becomes more and more upright, the more beautiful the secretary applying for the job is. The camera does not have to move. Sequencing does all the work for you. The painters in the background are consistently moving around, painting the scene. So something as simple as not moving the camera but thinking about the sequencing can be critical. Okay. Poor Liam Neeson. Okay, last example of the day until we go to our night session in the shoot. You can do it. The most important thing you should always ask yourself is when not to move the camera. So one of the biggest problems still photographers have when they go into motion is they're used to not moving the camera and they don't know how to deal with it. So a lot of this stuff starts being still. The reality is in modern filmmaking, the camera's almost always moving in some way. If it's not moving, at least people in the foreground are moving. When do you want things to stop? Here's a great example. When I studied these films, I would generally come out with 3 to 6 to 9 pages of notes. When I studied Goodfellas, it was about 40 pages of notes. If you want to really study a film and a director who knows what he's doing in terms of moving the camera and sequencing, Scorsese, Goodfellas. The camera is always moving for a reason. It's always doing something intelligent. It's always adding to the narrative. In this case, this is one of the few times in the entire movie, there's no coverage, just 2 shots. 1 shot, reverse, and back. Ask yourself, why did he choose this? So of course, Joe Pesci's character is kind of an animal, crazy, dangerous. And that parlays right into the way this is shot. Same coverage back and forth, no variation whatsoever. No one is moving.
What do you say? Funny how?
You can cut the tension with a knife,
No, I don't know. You said it. How do I know?
in part due to the lack of coverage.
Fuck am I funny? What the fuck is so funny about me? Tell me. Tell me what's funny.
Then he says, hey, you're a funny guy, and it starts all over again. But notice how you chose not to move the camera, to build the tension, to really get in there, to notice all the body language around him, the discomfort, the lack of movement. One guy at one point tried to come in to save him. It's like, don't even try, or you're next. And that's the key. It's the only scene that I remember out of Goodfellas where things just stop. And normally a scene like this would be horrible to watch. You'd be like, but in this case, quite the opposite. So I wanted to make a fine point, say, just because we talk about movement all day doesn't mean you should move the camera. Another quick case in point, another scene here from Schindler's List that really does illustrate that. You do not want to move here because this poor guy's fate is apparently sealed and he's waiting for the inevitable. What is the chance of a gun jamming? And they don't care. They're completely oblivious to this poor guy's suffering. That's the point. Just as he's frozen in time, so is the camera. Of course, now he pulls out another gun. No way he's going to survive this, right? Go tighter. Tighter. Unbearably tight. You think Spielberg knows what he's doing? Is he making this stuff up on the set? Or is he taking notes before he ever sets foot on set? That's the point. Highly effective scene in building tension and releasing. You're taking your audience on a continual ride in film, up and down, crescendo to crescendo. Build, release. Be careful when you release. Case in point, when an actor cries, it's over. There's nothing building up anymore. You don't want the actor to cry because we're going to cry as the audience. You don't want the actor to figure it out. You want the audience to say, don't do it, or change your mind. Don't be the bad guy. You know better. And then he does it anyways. That's what all this drama is about. The moment you do what the audience wants you to do, we lose interest. When, simple example, when Robert Downey Jr.'s character in Iron Man kisses Pepper Potts, it's over. Movie's over. All the tension is released halfway through the film or 2/3 of the way. You don't care about the rest. They've been building a tension up for a film and a half. So be very careful when you do that, because that's what you're doing. You're taking people on a journey, you're building and releasing. The last thing I'll cover is a director's script breakdown. This is where I may lose a lot of you, in a scene diagram. But it's really relatively simple. I got to spend a little bit of time on Shameless with a fantastic director by the name of David Nutter. And basically, from script to screen, you do, as a director on any piece, pretty much a narrative or episodic, you do a little script breakdown. You find out what the locations, the characters, and the actions and beats are. You take a little notes on the script. A lot of directors will, of course, block out action, actors first. They block out the camera second. Then they'll do a rehearsal, shoot, and then a turnaround. It's very formulaic. Here's how they break down a script. You may have seen Alex Bono do the art of visual storytelling, how he breaks down the script for a DP in terms of number of shots. Director will highlight the locations in orange with a yellow marker, just so they know every time they change locations. They then will go ahead and highlight the characters. So what people do I need, who I need to focus on? Fiona, few of her coworkers, her, and those. Fiona, her, Fiona, Connie, the office manager, and her. Notice we're only highlighting the in-between part, not the dialogue, of course. Yellow is for everything else, all the action. This allows the director to just have little beats and little marks, and he makes sure that she or he checks off if you want to do that while you go. More importantly, this is done in prep, so that as you read through the script over and over again for every revision, and you copy these notes back and forth, you're burning into your memory all the pieces that you need. Make sense? So you don't walk away having forgotten to get a key beat or moment in the script. He'll make 2 notes. He wants the good morning to be off screen, voiceover off camera, and he wants to grab a shot of Fiona turning her head. Doesn't care about the person saying good morning. They're not important. It's about Fiona's reaction to him, because she's walking back into the office afraid that she's about to lose her job because she slept with her boss. So she assumes that she's about to get fired. She's in her own world, which makes it more effective when someone says, hello, good morning. She doesn't even see who that is. We just are in her world. And then we want a little pause here when she takes a deep breath. And to create tension, back to what we talked about earlier, off screen, Connie's going to say Fiona to create that tension. Remember the monster example? I don't want to cut to the monster right away. I want to stay on your reaction and hear the Fiona coming off screen. This is what a scene diagram may look like. This is done in ShotMaker Pro. It's on the iPad, on your iPhone, and on your computer if you want to pay for that, $20, free otherwise. Go ahead, and the blue is Fiona's path. She comes in the room and sits down. This is your A cam pushing in initially. That's your second character that yells up the line, good morning. That's our B camera over the shoulder. Another B camera, it's actually not over the shoulder, it's clean. Another B camera over there. As they cross, she looks over as he says good morning. We then cut to our other A cam down here as it leads her to her seat. Does a little bit of an S curve. We never really see that on the screen in the end, but it was shot. No B cam here because it's just too narrow to fit a second camera. And she goes ahead and sits down. This is a good little technique to do so you can block out the timing as well. Think about, try to intercut the frames in your head, see how this is working out. Here's the Connie, the office manager, is going to walk in, off, out of frame, off screen, so that we build that tension. Okay? So some crazy directors do this. Most of you probably won't. I do it on very complex scenes so that I can easily communicate with my crew, usually with scribbles on a piece of paper. I don't do it this fancy. This is more for your benefit, and so you know the software does exist. Okay? This took me about 15 minutes to do on an iPad. Okay? Here's what the shot turned out as. A wide of Fiona walking in. We're going to cut to the B cam. That's on a tighter lens. Notice all the crossing in the foreground, liven up the frame. Back to the wide. Good morning, off camera. I need that angle of her. She sits down. Little pickups. Sit down with her and off screen,
Fiona.
just to create that tension. There you go, a little S-curve reverse there. We'll look at that during our live shoot. That's it, guys. You made it. Give yourself a round of applause.